President John Dramani Mahama on Thursday named another set of ministers to help steer the affairs of Ghana and lead us to greater development. He appointed Member of Parliament for Tamale South, Haruna Ijisu, as the Minister Designate for Education. Agric, Member of Parliament for Isunafo South, is heading to the Agric Ministry, and Elizabeth Ofosu Ejare has been penned for the Ministry of Trade and Agribusiness. Now, today we're discussing this and how to get these ministers to work effectively. Joining me in the studio is the former Public Relations Officer for the Ministry of Education, Kwesi Kwarteng. Thank you so much for your time here on Newsdesk. I also have with me Anthony Morrison. He's Executive Director, Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. CEO for the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. Thank you so much for your time here on Newsdesk. I would start with you, Kwesi Kwarteng, especially on the back of the issues we're hearing about CHARS and complaints about meals getting to students. Because you used to head that ministry, what exactly happened?
All right, thank you very much. And because it's the first time we are meeting in this, I think it's important that I wish you a happy new year.
Yeah.
And of course to all our viewers as well. I mean, for me, the most important thing is that seeing these images and footages gives me satisfaction that whichever way there is a solution to the issues or the concerns that we raised. I mean, if you look at the food supply chain, at every point is an ongoing process. So even if we were to be in government by now, supplies would have still been going on. Because if you look at it holistically, most of the schools do not have enough storage facilities. So at every point, suppliers are engaged to distribute food to the schools. You record that there are about 18 food items. So you may have gari, beans, maize, rice, and what have you, oil and what have you. So there are situations where genuinely you may have, let's say, reduced stock or even shortages with regards to these items. So I'm sure what CHARS did was to preempt the situation that indeed, if we do not intervene, we are going to have a problem. Because the point is that as soon as the government change, I mean, the kind of political environment that we find ourselves, you may find suppliers not sure of even the future consequences of their supply, whether or not they are going to be paid. Because, I mean, we know, unless we are all pretending, that as of now, the suppliers currently will be tagged as MPP suppliers. And they were not very sure whether this government was going to work with them. Again, we record that during the campaign season, the government made it clear that in terms of food distribution and procurement of food items, they are going to, I mean, give it to the head teachers. So if you're a supplier, certainly you are going to be scared whether or not the government is going to still engage you. So I'm sure that caused the fluctuations and the unwillingness of suppliers to continue to distribute the food. And of course, I'm unable to think for CHARS, but I believe that also informed their decision that, well, if suppliers are not doing the supplies as regular as the pattern should be, then we have to raise concern and alarm. But it's also important to also add that during that time, it was not a situation as how it was painted to be.
Oh, what's the situation?
Because, I mean, so let's look at just some logical consistency in understanding this. Assuming without admitting that there was literally no food items, all the 18 food items were in shortage. Food were distributed today. I mean, it started yesterday. Yeah. So before then, what were the students eating? So it presupposes that during that time, during those periods, there were food. But the projection was that the food was not going to be there forever. Like I indicated, even when we're in government, at every point, almost every week, different suppliers are supplying food to different schools. And of course, even though, contrary to the whole idea that supplies are done from a centralized level, no. Buffer stock engages suppliers. So for instance, if a supplier, if we look at, let's say, schools within the jurisdiction or the catchment area, for instance, in Tamale, it won't make even business sense to send food from Accra to Tamale. So usually, even though the procurement of the supplier may be done nationally, the supplier may source local food content from, let's say, Tamale or the northern region and distribute to the schools. And the schools, like I indicated, at every point may not have enough storage. About 70% or more may not have that adequate storage to store, let's say, food for a month or two. And of course, I mean, when you are dealing with food, some of them also have the tendency of even going bad. So at every point, you may have to get the supplies, doing the supplies periodically. So the supply, like I indicated, is not an event. It has always been an ongoing process. For instance, when we were leaving, we had also paid suppliers an amount of, I think we had released 100 million to suppliers and 50 million to the schools also to buy perishable food items. You recall that if you're looking at the food, there are two components of it. Aside the 18 food items that is being distributed, of course, coordinated centrally. There are also that bit of, I mean, when you put monetary value on it, 30% of the food items, that is also paid in the form of cash to the schools to also be able to also procure the perishable food items. Because, I mean, it won't make sense to say that you are making a supplier from Accra or any other place to take tomatoes, pepper, salt, and those basic items. So as at when we were also living, within that very same week, we also gave 50 million to the schools to also be able to buy, how do you call those perishable food items. So, I mean, I'm not so much interested in disputing whether or not there is food, but logically, if you want to analyze it, food were just distributed to the school just yesterday. I mean, even with that one, there are only two food items. We are looking at rice, we are looking at maize, if I'm correct. Those two food items. There is no way students are going to be sustained on only two food items. Certainly, it presupposes that there could be other items that are there that could complement the two food items that, I mean, per the directives of the president has now reached the schools. But for me, my priority is that, I mean, regardless of who is in power, who was in power, who ought to have done A, who could have done A, the most important priority that I see is that I'm excited that at the end of the day, I mean, food situation is being addressed. And then we hope that we'll have a more, I mean, comprehensive approach of also making sure that at every point we will have food in the schools. You see, the bigger problem, particularly, whether you are doing a centralized procurement or local procurement, sometimes there are some of the variables that you may not really control. For instance, if there are inflationary pressures and inflationary fluctuations, regardless of where you are procuring, the suppliers may be unwilling to send the food. Because if they take food and by the time they come for their monies, the value of that money has really reduced. You get a reluctance, especially the similar situation that we had now. Post-election, the previous government campaign was that, well, when we come, we are going to jettison the suppliers and give the job to the headmasters to do. So if you are a supplier and you find yourself in that situation after 7th of December, you realize that the current government has lost a new government who does not necessarily want to work with the suppliers and has promised within the campaign manifesto that your job is going to be sourced to the headmasters in addition to their managerial role. Will you be willing to distribute? So there are some, I mean, instances where genuinely you may have some fluctuations, or, I mean, it may not necessarily even be a cash flow challenges, but other variables could also compel suppliers not even to be willing to take supplies. But for me, as I sit here, I'm excited that whichever way I'm seeing supplies of food to schools, but at least it is also fair to also put it in a very good perspective that it cannot be the case as the alarm that was sung, that there was no food in the school. If there is no food in the school, these are only two food items. How are they going to add oil? How are they going to add all other items to be able to? Yeah.
Point noted. Now, let's shift our attention now to the ministerial nominations, and I'll come to you shortly just to get your thoughts, Anthony. Let's start with the Education Ministry, and then we come all the way to Agric.
Before that,
okay.
I won't be sitting there and not make a statement on the
district. Okay, you want to also make a point.
I'm in that sector. I chair the private sector activate for agriculture.
Okay.
So I fall within that mandate. And I think that to a large extent, buffer stock, he and I were having a discussion on this. And I said clearly, buffer stock have not done their work properly. Okay. In this current dispensation, how is buffer stock managing the distribution, food stock? Okay. We have proposed, when we were developing the ECOWAS storage policy 7 years ago, which was coordinated by Buffer Stock, we proposed to them, we said, look, Buffer Stock, get Parliament Committee on Agriculture, Cocoa and Food Affairs to give you a legislation, a legal background where you can have and force all those who keep food stock as a commodity. So all warehouses will now have the mandate to declare every stock that is available. Okay? So that also gives buffer stock that power to be able to go in there and say, look, we do know you have 10,000 of this year, soya, rice, maize, groundnut, palm, whatever. So you can use government allowances to be able to use that to redistribute to the schools. Right. We need to do things in this current dispensation in a way that addresses our challenges as people. But for us to wait for the schools to start preempting the issue that the schools might be running out of food, I think that is not a leadership issue, a proper leadership. We need to put this into proper context in that we begin to address the challenges of future leaders. So when they come, they'll be able to build on that. But when we sit down and schools are having to shout because they are gradually waning off on food, that is not good. And I think that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, they issued some payment to the schools recently. I think you are aware of that.
Yeah, because of there were only food items. So Charles quickly have to prompt them that they will still need some.
So I'm sure that would have catered for the remaining 18 foodstuffs you talk about.
Not necessarily. I think it's a temporary solution whilst they streamline the.
Well, something must be done. And I think going forward, buffer stock should be more strategic in the redistribution and how the depletion of the stock at the various schools are going. They should have a dashboard showing what is going down, and the schools can pull up the demand. Okay, we are running short on this. We will need a supply or a restocking in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Then buffer stock can also work around the declaration and be able to look at the warehouses that they have and what is in the stock, so that some of these things we shouldn't be here where we are today if they have done the right thing.
Thank you, Anthony, for making that point. So let me just continue with you. Let's look at the minister-designate that has been nominated to set the affairs in the Agric Ministry and your initial thoughts about his competence.
Yeah, yesterday I think I granted an interview to your channel, and I made it clear that Honorable Rekopoku is seasoned in terms of industry expertise. He's someone who has worked in the cocoa sector for many years. He's also a farmer. And we believe strongly that he will be able to handle the issues properly. We in the industry, private sector, will be ready to collaborate with him, to give him all the needed support. Let me also remind him that he's coming into a sector where we are very heavily indebted in several aspects of our agriculture sector. The issue of the distribution of the rice and all that were done in view of the drought mitigation, the funding that got from the World Bank.
Are you worried about that?
Well, even though, the former minister knew the stand of the chamber and all our allied partners, peasant farmers, GAWU, we all raised the issue that the importation of food, and you see, it also goes back to what I said about buffer stock. If buffer stock had the food stock declaration register, okay, the former Agric minister would know that there was stock of food in the country, and he wouldn't have spent over $120 million to buy imported rice and maize for distribution for farmers, okay? And now, we pointed out clearly that the importation lacks any technical sustainability
you
strategy.
Felt it ought to have been locally sourced.
Exactly. There was no need using $120 million to import rice and maize. It was just a clueless activity that was undertaken. Because if buffer stock was really up on its activity, have a proper register of stock of food in the country, we shouldn't have done this, what we did. $120 million just went out like that.
And that food that was now serving
that would have
pupils,
come to the farmers.
It's not coming to the farmers either.
No, it's not coming to the farmers. We've lost it. Okay.
What are the key challenges that this new administration addressing the agri sector?
The key challenge, first of all, is to make sure that we build a robust agriculture sector information management database. Okay. The importation of some of the things that were done is as a result of absence of no register or no database to work with. If we have a robust database, we are able to make the right decision, build the right national project, and expect the right result. If you use outdated data to develop a national agriculture project for the next 5 years, you have set yourself to fail. Because old data cannot be used to achieve new results. It will give you same old results. So that's what we're talking about. We need a data, a very robust data, both private sector and government and development partners can work with. 2, we in the private sector are saying that we ply our trade with several ministries, okay? So Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Environment. Look, we ply our trade among about Ministry of Finance. Look, a lot. What we're saying is that, are we able to give the sector agribusiness development and regulatory authority? When we go in there, we are able to secure our license and permit for export. We are able to secure our food and drugs and standards authority certifications. We are able to secure our business operating permit, which we normally get from local government. Okay. We are able to secure all the needed things from one stop, because the time, the cost, and the long bureaucracy in securing some of this also takes a dire consequences on some of the. In fact, we're talking about over 2 to 3 million youth in Ghana who are actually involved, SMEs, who are actually involved in agribusiness. The kind of money they require to go into agribusiness, sometimes it's about 10,000 Ghana cedis. But you happen to have to spend almost half of what you require to put into that. I mean, your fruit juice that you take. Sometimes the person who does that may just have invested about 5,000, 10,000 to procure the juice maker, the bottles, the labels, and get a certification. If you ask such a person, how much did it cost you to get that? From the business operating permit at the Ministry of Local Government, from the food and drugs, from the standards authority, and go to Registrar General, register your business. How much does it cost you? By the time you do that with your 5,000 that you intended to maybe increase the capacity of your business has gone into certification and licenses and other things. So we want an authority that is set up. And don't forget, look, we have 57% of the rural population directly and indirectly involved in agriculture. Almost 30% of the workforce in Ghana are directly and indirectly employed in the agriculture sector. And 42%, okay, of our GDP is anchored on agriculture. Even gold and money doesn't give us what we get in agriculture. Okay. So we need to be very strategic. Everybody eats to go to work. Everybody eats to sleep. Everybody eats to do an activity. You don't drink fuel. You don't put on. So data
collection is key for you.
What we are saying is that we need the Agribusiness Development Authority put up. We need the data. Now, secondly, we just launched globally. No, I mean, this point is very important. Okay. The African Union Commission just launched the Continental Comprehensive Agriculture Development Program. Now, this is going to take effect this year. It was launched in Kampala, Uganda, and it has taken effect. We need to streamline that and properly align it to our long-term strategy, the FASDEP and the METASIP. As we do that, we avoid 3 things. Government first must be committed to its policies, commitment in terms of regulation and financing. 2, we align our policies to our priority as a country. And 3, we must stop duplication of agriculture sector projects so that the right funding, the right grants, the right finances are directed so we can have the impact and the productivity.
Okay, I have to come in at this point. I know you have so much to talk about, but then we don't have that much time. So let me just come to Kwesi Kwarteng. Haruna Idrisu, head into the Education Ministry. What are your expectations?
I mean, just a quick bite before I come to Haruna. Okay. I think we agree with you that largely we have to strengthen the capacity of our state institutions. Of course, with regards to buffer stock, you know, all over the world, the concept of buffer stock is to be able to buy food at a very cheap price, usually from the farm gates.
Not only buy, but you can also induce production.
Exactly. And then you store or you stock it. So that mostly they are even able to compel the regulation of the market, because at the end of the day, when food is in shortage, they bring theirs on the market and then they're able to stabilize food prices. And most of them relies on credit facilities from the banking institutions. Unfortunately, our buffer stocks has not been able to, increase or boost their capacities to that level where they are able to partner with financial institutions to be able to say that, well, we have the capacity to induce production, take the production or take the food items and store. So I'm sure it's a conversation that I agree with. But I didn't get a bit about when he said about $125 million were received for some importation.
So you are not in our sector. In the agriculture sector,
okay.
There was some money meant for drought mitigation.
Okay.
You remember there was drought?
So that point is well noted. And then the World Bank had to provide a facility for government to import some of these items to help cushion the impact on farmers in the northern region affected by dry spell in parts of the country as well. So let's stick to the...
So the money had a designated mandate, or, what...
It was a drought mitigation.
Yes,
we said that the causes of the drought are what? Absence of water.
Okay.
And this drought, the prediction that will stay with us. So what do? You import or get...
So your argument is that instead of importing the items, it ought to have been locally sourced. Point noted.
Okay. In addition
let's make progress.
Provide the drought mitigation.
Let's make progress.
Facilities.
Gentlemen, let's make progress.
No, I wanted some education.
Okay.
Because it looks a bit... I'm in education and law, but I didn't really...
Okay. Okay.
But now to my
let's
point,
make progress.
on Haruna Idrisu.
Okay.
First of all, let me congratulate him. I think he's a fine gentleman. Of course, full of ambition and also inspires all of us, irrespective of where you stand. I can only wish him the best. The Ministry of Education. You see,
what two key policies are you leaving behind that you would like him to take up?
I don't know. This is a leading question, but anyway. This is a leading question, but I'll still, factor your response in my whole answer that I'm giving.
Okay.
So,
but you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So, like I indicated, a fine gentleman. We wish him the best. I expect him to do well. Except to say that, of course, this is not to necessarily, sing glorifying songs on my boss, but I am of the view that during our time at the ministry, to the best of our abilities, we work so well that, irrespective of where you stand, the expectation is so high. So Ghanaians will have wilder expectations from him. But I'm sure he'll be able to meet it, because I understand that he also has, future ambitions, and largely it is his own interest to really work well. But you see, one thing about education is that almost everybody is a beneficiary of education. And so people have vested interest in it. Every person has, by and large, has also passed through the education system. So whichever way, people are going to scrutinize. But I wish him all the best.
Okay.
But I think most importantly, when it comes to policy decisions, I'm just reading their campaign manifesto vis-a-vis the realities that is coming on, that probably will expect more clarifications on. Okay. One has to do with yesterday, the youth tender was made by Dr. Clement Apak with regards to the free school fees at the tertiary
level.
Yeah,
okay.
I think that one we may, now he has been appointed a minister, the expectation is that we expect a clarity on that. Because if you look at page 97 of the NDC's manifesto, for instance, and quickly, the NDC, if I should...
Okay. If you can read it briefly, but you have just 1 minute to make the point.
The next NDC government will introduce no-fee stress policy to alleviate the hardships on parents and students in public tertiary institutions. And by that, so doing, they are implementing a no academic fees policy. But right now, we are hearing that no academic fee policy, which was universal in nature, will no longer be based on what Clement Apak said. Yeah. So we are expecting clarity. Now that there is a minister, we hope that
can I take a bite on the TV?
Well, you have 30 seconds to take that bite, because we have to go.
I want to also congratulate the Honorable Minister nominated. But I want him to focus on TVET.
Okay.
The previous government wanted to do what we call CBT, competence-based training, which at a point became too expensive, so they withdrew. Now, CBT is very expensive. We need to look at it from a proper point of view.
Okay.
What is the best approach for TVET education in Ghana? And it is TVET that industrialized a nation. Education sets the benchmark.
Okay.
But TVET is what propels.
I think it's really fair that I take 10 seconds to let's respond.
Yeah.
You see,
10
TVET,
seconds.
when we came,
yeah.
Under GS, there were only 35 institutions, even scattered under 19 different agencies.
Okay.
As of now, there are 225 TVET institutions, all running free.
All right.
No,
all right. Okay, gentlemen, gentlemen. Well, to our audience, thank you so much for listening to us. Kwesi Kwarteng, former PRO, Ghana Education Service. I also have Anthony Morrison in the studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll be right back with...